At present, we've now got a pretty well working inbox contract that exists inside of the Remix editor online. Now, it's fun to play around with the integrated JavaScript VM here in Remix. However, at some point in time, we're probably going to want to take this contract and actually deploy it out to either the test network or the main network. So we can actually use this contract with real projects that we want to build. So it's not enough just to edit this thing inside of Remix. We need to figure out how we can actually deploy the contract. So that's the real issue that we need to solve now. We've got Remix, here's our contract source, but how do we actually deploy it? For deployment, there's a variety of different options. Remember, at the core of whatever deployment process we end up using, it's always going to go through a very similar process. We're going to take our contract source. That source is going to be placed into the Solidity compiler. Just so you know, this compiler is running inside the Remix tool right now. The Solidity compiler is going to spit out both an ABI and the contract bytecode. And this bytecode right here is what actually ends up getting deployed to some network. So clearly, all right, Remix maybe does like half the job, but how do we actually get this code or that deployed or that bytecode over to our network that we want to deploy to? For that, there's a very common tool that you're going to see mentioned in a tremendous amount of documentation online and blog posts and all that kind of good stuff. And that tool is called Truffle. Truffle is kind of a one-stop shop for development of Ethereum contracts. This Truffle project, or the Truffle CLI, it's a command line tool that we can use to aid in contract creation, so like actually writing out source code, in doing some local testing, so programmatic automated testing to make sure that our contract behaves the way we want, and it is also useful for deployment as well. You're going to see a lot of mentions of Truffle as soon as you start working with any type of Ethereum project, and it's a very common tool to use on any professional project as well. Now, it sounds like I'm kind of talking very nicely about Truffle here, right? I'm saying, yeah, everybody uses this thing, and it does a lot of very helpful things for us. Well, there's just one little issue here. Just one little issue. Here's the thing about Truffle. Truffle is still undergoing rapid development. Some things about Truffle don't really work well. Like some functionality in this Truffle tool is a little bit rough around the edges. Other things don't work at all. So Truffle has some features that you would really expect it to have, but they don't actually work. They don't exist. They have not yet been implemented by the authors of the Truffle library. And above all, features inside of Truffle sometimes break. So maybe one day everything is working fine. You then update to the latest version of Truffle, and all of a sudden some feature of it is not working at all. The point I'm trying to make here is that all the technology that we are using around Ethereum, so not only Truffle, but also Remix and MetaMask and Web3, all these different libraries are still in a very constant state of flux. So if you are used to using software or third-party libraries like Node libraries or JavaScript libraries or gems, whatever dependencies you're used to using that might seem like they're really rock solid and very dependable for projects that you work on today, you really can't bring that same attitude over to the Ethereum world. The dependencies that we are using are going to break. Sometimes they don't function well, or they don't function at all. And that's just part of the very developing and active ecosystem around Ethereum. So what I'm really saying here is as we start looking at Truffle and a variety of other tools that we're going to use throughout this course, you really have to have some amount of patience. Please, I beg you, because some of these tools are really rough around the edges and they're just not going to work the way you expect. But hey, that's why we're here. That's why we're in a course trying to learn how this stuff works. So with all this in mind, with this knowledge that, hey, sometimes things don't work at all, from my perspective, trying to teach you this stuff, it seems like a very clear solution is to try to use as few of these tools as possible. So for this first project that you and I are going to put together, in order to deploy our inbox contract code right here to the actual Rinkeby network or to any network whatsoever, rather than using Truffle or any other fancy tools, you and I are going to put together a custom node project from scratch that's going to aid us in contract creation, in doing some local testing, and actually doing deployment to the Rinkeby network. So there are tools out there to automate this process and make it very easy to get set up and started, but I'm saying that, hey, sometimes they're not quite dependable. So I want you to understand what these tools are doing behind the scenes. So you and I are going to build our own custom boilerplate that is going to aid in all these common tasks. And we're going to set it up all manually so you have a great idea of what these tools are actually doing. It's really going to be a lot of fun, and it's going to give you a lot of insight into the purpose of Truffle and Web3 and all these other libraries. So with this in mind, let's continue in the next video, and we're going to start setting up this custom project that's going to help us run, test, and deploy our our Ethereum contracts. So quick break, and we'll start that in the next video.